It was much more practical for them to wrap the already present pagan ideas in tradition and intertwine that with Christianity rather than the true teachings of Christ standing out on their own. And I hope you guys can picture that in your minds. Okay? And that is one way in which Christmas is pagan. It's pagan because it has a pagan origin. The day has a pagan origin. If this is really about the birthday of Christ, well, let's find that out. But nobody can find that out. Why can't you find it out? Because his birthday is insignificant. And even in the kingdom, we probably will never celebrate his birth because it was a happy, joyous time, but it wasn't something that was held to the significance of a celebration. Like we said, we can establish and you can historically find that the first century Christians did not celebrate his birth. So it was almost, insignificant. But the second way, I told you guys two ways, right? The second way that you can look at Christmas and say, well, this is pagan, is in the ritual that happens itself, like the actual ritual that takes place. And what is it? The Christmas tree. The Christmas tree. Okay? Now, a lot of people don't really think about, Christmas trees or what's the significance of this. But if you do your research on the Christmas tree, as I have done, it says here now, speaking on the origin of the Christmas tree, many pagan cultures used to cut burrows of evergreen trees in December, move them into their home or temple, and decorate them. Modern-day pagans still do. This was to recognize the winter solstice, the time of the year that had the shortest daylight hours and longest night of the year. Okay? And it was also, as you read on, this is actually from, this is a religioustolerance.com website where they're actually breaking down this same type of a topic. And it's available from various sources. You guys can get whichever one you want on this. But basically, it says here now that the ancient Egyptians did an observance similar to that. And here we go here too, talking about the decorating of the tree. It says, the first decorating, and this was actually quoted from a book that was referenced in this publication or on this blog or website. It says that the first decorating of an evergreen tree began with the heathen Greek and their worship of their god Adonia, who allegedly was brought back to life by the serpent Asclepius after being slain, right? So this is basically telling you that the tree itself, decorating this tree, has a pagan origin. And when you think about the original commandments that God had for the children of Israel, one of the commandments was what? You must not revere a particular object, idolatry. And not saying that, the tree is idolized, but it definitely falls into that category, or it can fall into that category. So the children of Israel and their worship strayed away from objects being associated with their worship. But it gets much deeper than that. For more information on the paganism, the pagan origin of the Christmas tree, if you have a Bible, please turn to the book of Jeremiah, one of your favorites. Jeremiah, the 10th chapter, and we can get information on the heathenistic practice of decorating the Christmas tree, letting you know that it's a pagan teaching, did not originate with the true God or his people, and therefore you should really be careful with what you're doing with it. Let's get this though. This is Jeremiah, the 10th chapter. 10th chapter, and beginning in verse 2. It says, well, we'll start in verse 1. Hear ye the words of the Lord speaketh unto you, or being spoken unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven. For the heathen are dismayed at them, for the customs of the people are vain. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it may not move. They are upright as a palm tree, but speak not. They must needs be born, because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, neither also is it in them to do good. For as much as there is none like unto thee, O Lord, thou art great, and thy name is great in might. So this is telling us, it's very clear instruction. And what you have is the exact same thing that happens in Christmas. During Christmas, they cut the tree down, they decorate the tree, and voila, you have this beautiful monument. But you're seeing here now that in the time of Jeremiah, that there was heathens that were doing the exact same thing. And the Lord says, learn ye not the ways of the heathen. And so it's basically information to show us, at the very least, that the Israelites, the people who were worshiping God in a way that was acceptable to him, were not taking part in this custom that was being partaken of by the heathens, by the people who did not know God. Okay? So again, that's the second part of Christmas that plays an intricate role, like a critical role in the modern day observance of this holiday. My whole thing is, if it's about Christ, if we're going to be celebrating something that has to do with Christ, let's make it about Christ, and let's totally erase or totally get rid of any pagan relationship to what we're trying to establish as true worship. And the reason why it may seem kind of harsh to some people, and I don't want people to think that it's just my understanding, but the reason why it's such a big deal, when sometimes it doesn't seem like it, is because the Lord has a particular way of being worshipped, right? When you get into the Ten Commandments, he says that you should have no other gods before his face. Now, you know, or we know, that the pagans, or the individuals who were heathen, in other words, non-Israelite people, people who were in a relationship with God, these individuals had their own gods. The Egyptians had their own gods. The Greeks had their own gods. Just the same way the Buddhists and other types of people have their own gods today. But just as in the example of Moses, the Red Sea, and the Egyptians and their God, the Most High was able to display his superiority over whatever supposed deities that the people at that time were worshiping, because they thought that they had the true God, but in reality, it was vain. It was all vanity. Because at the best, they're praying to fallen angels, at best, if they're not praying to anything at all. You see what I'm saying? And so we can't allow ourselves to come into the mindset of many so-called Christians today who are willing to put their true worship and pagan teachings or whatever other stuff and mix them together and present them to God like, this is my worship to you. This is acceptable. It doesn't work that way, y'all. And for further confirmation on that, we're going to get, let's see here. This is Acts, where are we at here? I think it was Acts the 2nd chapter. I lost it, but I think I can find it real quick. Acts the 2nd chapter, dealing with Paul and him being on a missionary trip into a pagan land, into a land where they had their own gods and things going on. And basically he goes into this land and does this miracle. And I found it here. It's Acts, if you guys want to get it, Acts 14, verse 8, okay? It says, and there sat a certain man at Lystra, impotent in his feet, being a cripple from his mother's womb, who never walked. The same heard Paul speak, who steadfastly beholding him, and perceived that he had faith to be healed. So Paul saw that this man had the faith to be healed. It says, and Paul said with a loud voice, stand upright on thy feet. And he leaped and walked. And when the people saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in the speech of Lycaonia, the gods have come down to us in the likeness of men. Okay? And it says they called Barnabas Jupiter and Paul Mercurius, because he was the chief speaker. So by nature, okay, these were people who had no knowledge of the God of the Old Testament. They had no idea who the Most High was. So when they saw Paul and his companion produced this miracle, they went off in their own little, you know what I'm saying, their own way of worship. They got excited and they